Okay. All right. Well, hello. I'm Lisa Anderson, president of LMA Consulting Group and also a president of the Inland Empire chapter. And I would like to talk to you today about supply chain and update on challenges and opportunities. We wouldn't want to make the whole thing terribly depressing, which it could become. So I do believe there's going to be more opportunities than ever before. So that part's the good news. However, we also are having more challenges than ever before, so which is probably not new to anyone on this call since we're dealing with them on a daily basis. This is a visual of the old, if you will, version of the supply chain, the simplistic supply chain from many years ago. I always look at it from the customer point of view. So, your end customer, and then, you typically would have at least a distributor in the middle, a manufacturer, and then we have suppliers, like at least tier 1, tier 2. So that's like a simplified supply chain. And that is the way it was in the old days, if you will. And then in the last 10, 20 years, it has truly exploded. So we have become a complex global supply chain. One of the companies that we've done tours of in the Inland Empire in the past is Paulson Manufacturing, and they have a supply chain that goes back and forth between Europe, the U.S., and I forgot the other country, but there's another country. So like they have multiple, products flying around the world, and they are not alone. There's, not only products flying around the world, but there's ports and water, air, all sorts of complications between getting places. So this is what the supply chain has become. And of course, the pandemic blew it all up because, many of these nodes, if you don't, any of these nodes or links, if there's a challenge, it breaks the entire supply chain because, it doesn't, unless, you're resilient, and we'll get to some of the solutions. But basically that was the issue. Now, some of the current challenges in the supply chain, which we'll go through several. And oh, by the way, feel free to ask questions as we go along. It's always better to be interactive. Throw your problems out there. I am a consultant in my day job, so I work with manufacturers and distributors and help them with these types of challenges. So I'm happy to provide some ideas. So anyway, just feel free to flow them out. But so the current challenges in the supply chain, well, specifically in Southern California, which we are in, there are a ton of logistics challenges, to be sure. We're the number one gateway. However, we are losing that status. And so what I mean by the gateway is that we are bringing, the LA and Long Beach ports were the number one, port gateways in the US. And as a combined unit, they're still largely number one. And it goes through, Southern California, but a lot of it through the Inland Empire. So, we're really, really familiar with it on our end, through warehouses and distribution, and then out to consumers in California and manufacturers and, other companies in California, which California is, if you were to look at it, it's bigger. The economy of California is bigger than many countries. So there's a lot of it goes back to California, and then a lot of it also goes across the United States and beyond. So, we've had a strong logistics infrastructure. However, there are a tsunami of unrealistic regulations coming down the pipe. I've been going to the Southern California E-commerce and Logistics Summit, and I've been on the board member of some organizations that sponsor it for many years. And this was the first one, which I attended about a month ago, and it was like the most depressing event I've been to. It's because they're giving up. There's so many challenges. Like, for example, there's lots of good intentions because we're trying to do what's best for the environment and to be green. We don't want trucks driving, by our houses, those kinds of things. However, we have, some challenges with that, because at the same time, we're all ordering things from places like Amazon. So where do we expect the trucks to drive by, after all? And where do we expect those warehouses to be if they're not in our backyard? So that's problematic. But basically, they've implemented some rules. I couldn't possibly go into them all, but a few of them are, we are demanding that, like, the trucks have a new engine if they're older than, I think it's 2012, which is cost prohibitive, to be sure. It's like, forget the amount. I think it's like 250,000, but it's cost prohibitive to buy a new truck. And a lot of those folks are small, owner operators. And so they're just saying, you know what, it's time to retire. This is crazy. And so, we don't have a way to bring the product from the ports to the warehouses, and from the warehouses to customers and anywhere else, because there's no way that we're going to have enough trucks. Now, if we also have several requirements like EVs and other alternative fuels from the trucking standpoint. And there's a lot of progress going on. It's actually really exciting in terms of all the technologies that are being explored and the progress being made. But the rules are maybe, I don't know, 5-10 years before we have a solution. So the technologies are not ready. And for example, if we were to charge all the trucks that get product from the ports, it would require more than the electrical power grid for all of California, because it takes like 8 to 10 hours when the truck drivers can't be driving to charge, and it just takes an enormous amount of power, which we don't have. So that's obviously unrealistic. So anyway, I could go on and on. I'm getting a lot of potential like clients, although I don't know if I exactly want them. But, in terms of a warehousing rule that's gone into effect, the indirect source rule, it's called. And that's like quite crazy as well. So basically what that means is like, if you pretend like your warehouse is like an In-N-Out, you're an In-N-Out store owner, it means that you would have to pay for all the cars and the emissions that come to visit you as an In-N-Out, which is of course your business. And so in warehousing, trucks coming to see you is your business. So that's problematic, to say the least. So anyway, there's a lot of challenges there that have to be worked through. On the other hand, there's a lot of progress and innovation going on in all of these areas, from rail to trucking to ports. However, not nearly as fast as the rules say that they have to be done. So that's problematic. And then the warehouses are maxed out currently. So there's just no space in the Inland Empire or anywhere else for that matter. So the average vacancy rate before the average vacancy rate is 3.6% versus the pre-pandemic at 6 to 8%, which is a pretty big difference. And the Inland Empire is like at 1.9%. So it's, there's just not any space left. The rates are going up, and it's a challenge. And so they're maxed out because they have a lot of inventory, but also because, we are reshoring. People are panicked. Well, companies are panicked and ordering extra, that type of thing. So as we're all familiar with as supply chain professionals, from a manufacturing standpoint, capacity is absolutely challenged to keep up. All of my clients, I don't think there's any client that I have that has not turned away customers because they just don't have the people. And they are instead, they're prioritizing, which is a smart thing, based on customer profitability, product profitability, who really makes sense. So there's a lot going on with keeping up from a manufacturing standpoint. And then last but not least, I was talking about the consumer expectations. Well, there's like a conflict of interest that I mentioned, but there's a lot of, we expect deliveries same day, next day. At the same time, we expect for no issues, like the trucks don't drive with any I don't know, like they're not on the freeways at all. They just somehow magically arrive. I mean, there are some ways to do that with like drones as an example, but you don't really, it's not practical to deliver via drone from Amazon, but you can use like, for example, a drone to get it close to, to where close to a particular local area and then deliver from there. So there's like technologies going on with that type of a thing. But basically, there's still plenty of challenges. They're just slightly different challenges, and yet there's still shortages. There's not as many, but there's quite a few. So let's see here. What do we? I was just looking to see if we have any questions here. I work in the semi industry, and our chips, on average, travel the globe 2 to 3 times. Oh my goodness! Before getting to the consumer. That's very interesting. Thank you for that fact, because actually, I've been like talking on chips lately. There's a lot of supply going into place in the next several years. Well, but it's not enough. I mean, we used to supply in the US a significant, most of our needs over the years. Now 90% of the advanced computer chips, which of course we all want and need, because advanced computer chips are what goes into our cars, our phones. I mean, that's rather important. Well, 90% of them are produced in Taiwan. So is it no wonder that China wants to like take over Taiwan? So that's, another highly problematic issue. But anyway, that's very interesting. So thanks for providing that information. All right. So then let's see here. Yep. I see, Tony, you were. All right, good. Then we have, let's see, go to the next slide here. Okay, so, well, this leads us into the global issues. So from a global issue standpoint, I just mentioned Taiwan. But in addition, 65% of all computer chips are produced in China as well. No, 90% of the advanced computer chips in the world and 65% of all computer chips between China and Taiwan. So it's it's creating a new set of issues, and if you ignore it because, well, you're hoping that the costs stay low and things will be okay, because it's really problematic to design your supply chain. And that's going to provide opportunities, which is where we get to the opportunities for the people who aren't hiding their head under a rock, because believe me, it's going to come up sometime. So basically, that's one issue. The Russia-Ukraine war has created all sorts of challenges that are still going on because of oil and natural gas, which is much more than just the price of gas that we fill up our cars. It goes into countless products, from plastic to, healthcare, medical devices. I mean, it's endless. So, but it's more than just that. There's also food, fertilizer that feeds the world. We get a lot of those types of items, and items that go into our phones and other electronics and medical devices, all very important items that are commodities that you find in that region. So there's a lot of challenges from the Russia-Ukraine war. And then, the China zero COVID policy, I just bring that up. It was what was happening last year. And it, in essence, means that China they shut down production, because obviously if it's zero COVID, that was going to be a problem, and there people couldn't show up to work. So when that happens, what do? I mean, it's the same thing we do. We prioritize who we produce for. And it depends who you are. I mean, if you're Apple, maybe they would prioritize you for now. However, if we get into a conflict, obviously they would not prioritize you. So, it's risky, to say the least. So that's definitely another issue. And a really important matter here is that a significant percentage of active pharmaceutical ingredients, which is required for all of our pharmaceutical items, are made in China. So, like, I don't know what we're thinking, but we better be doing something about these problems sooner versus later. So that's several of the other challenges we have to address. From a talent point of view, I mentioned that every single client is turning away business and prioritizing, but they're also finding issues, and that's more the manufacturing, maintenance, operational resources, but they're also having a real challenge finding even high-skilled folks. There's been a, it's very difficult to have really dramatic drops or increases because you just can't hire and fire people rapidly with the baby boomers, which is a significant portion of the population, like retiring during the pandemic and still that's that they're not being replaced by the generation following them. There just aren't enough people by any means. And then the younger generations, like the millennials, Gen Zs, have a whole different approach to how they work. And it's there's just not enough resources, talent, and expertise out there. So it's highly problematic. The workforce participation rate has been much lower than it was before the pandemic because people have retired, other people are changing jobs. They said, what, I don't know that I want to do this because now I've realized that life is not all, I want to live my life instead of like having issues because I lasted through the pandemic, whatever, and they're doing other things. So there's just the workforce participation rate has been going up slightly, but it's still in a not a great state. And there's going to be so much more technology coming our way that the high skilled roles are highly problematic, whereas the low skilled roles are being replaced by automation. And there's a complete mismatch in terms of folks who have the skills. So the people who are like on this call are obviously continuing to build on their skills, and you all will be highly successful. However, there's several people out there that just aren't interested in, at least in the moment, continually building on their skills, and they are going to be out of a job. It's going to be highly problematic. So it's definitely creating a mismatch here. The automation side of things, we're definitely moving towards automation. And although I see a question, it might relate to the last one. So go ahead. What's your question?
I guess my question isn't just getting your perspective on this is, as we talk about friendshoring, nearshoring, everything coming back, and then the workforce and COVID, what have you seen? So my question, I guess, is as we think about bringing some manufacturing back to the States, we have a plethora of skill sets that need to happen, right? So you have the skilled, and then you have factory workers now being introduced, which is not something we offshored that because we didn't want to have our talent doesn't want to do that, right? So now you have to worry about career pathing for the operators, but then you also are faced with the fact that no one actually wants to go into the office anymore. So how it's just interesting. I mean, have you seen any trends of that shifting at all, or?
Well, I mean, for manufacturing, you're absolutely right. That is the issue. From an office job point of view, some of my clients are still in the old ages. But they, and they're like, we want everybody to come in, and it's not working. It's not going to work for them. And it's not working for them. And so, it's not like it's not going to be all or none, like everybody has to come in or everybody is virtual. Neither is like optimal. What's really working, and I talk to a lot of like executive recruiters and like technical recruiters. I mean, unfortunately, you have to be better than you used to have to be. It's really the bottom line. You have to have a great culture, good leaders, because people work for people, not for companies. So they, have to have good leaders. All these things are like quite the challenge, though. And you're going to have to like have leaders that know how to provide support and also accountability, both virtually and in person. Yet you have to bring people together from time to time. Because like I even do that, like with clients now, I do 80% of it remotely, and it's more effective and quicker because we can provide, like we can share screens, review items, and like go back and record them and see what it is. Once we find like, hey, there's an issue here, like how do we address that? We can go back to the recordings and like figure out how to address that so much faster than when I had to look over someone's shoulder, take notes, then I would look back at my notes, but of course I don't have like pictures of all this stuff. So it's much better. However, it still requires some sort of interaction it depends on the frequency based on what we're doing and like how intensive it is and how many people are involved. But generally speaking, like once a quarter or something, where you have like more of a intense interaction. You like put together plans, you solidify relationships, and you move forward. So there's, going to be some sort of a hybrid
Yeah.
experience that's going to work best for the office people. On the manufacturing floor, you're absolutely right. It's or in distribution circles, you can't do that remotely. Now there's some pieces, with technology that you can monitor, technologies and equipment remotely. So there is some of that you can do, and some of the new technology, like just even the what do you call them? Where you, for some reason the word's not coming to me, but you look in these glasses, and you can
Oh,
like learn how to run equipment, and those types of things are highly beneficial. So you can do some of this remotely, but on the other hand, most of the jobs are moving, actually, even in manufacturing, they're moving from low skilled to medium skill or higher skill, depends on what the industry is. Lots of questions there, but they're automating the repetitive tasks, because why wouldn't you? You don't have to worry about workers' comp issues. You can run 24/7, and after all, they don't have people who want to show up on third shift, for sure. So you're in deep trouble. You can't supply the volume you need, so they're automating robotics. There's lots of different ways that you can automate. And so I was just in a client today that is looking at robotic welding for the easier tasks. So again,
mhm.
the tasks that are repetitive, they're automating, and that just means that our skills have to be higher for the folks who are in manufacturing. So I think that they'll have opportunities, like salary wise, so it'll be attractive that way. But we haven't been emphasizing it enough in schools overall. Obviously, our Apex chapters have been, because we actually had an instructor teach a group of high school students. I don't know how he survived this challenge, but basically he did it somehow. I was glad it wasn't me. But we do things like that, so we're doing our best, but it's by no means enough. To your point.
Yeah,
So
I guess
that's
I was
where.
wondering. I was wondering also. It's like if the younger generation used to be very social and work was a social aspect for them, if they're the first ones to come back to the office necessarily because they like that social interaction, the pizza Fridays or whatever it is that they do. I'm not
Well,
of
there
the younger
is,
generation.
and actually it depends apparently on the
Culture.
age groups, but basically some of them are, it's like you said, social, and the problem is that they like had years where they don't really have mentors, so they don't know what they don't know, which is causing other issues because they truly don't know.
Yeah.
And there are less mentors around, so you're right, that's a real issue. But yeah, some of them are wanting to go into the office. On the other hand, the younger folks are also, they're younger in their lives, they want more flexibility to be able to go to their kids practices or whatever. So there's challenges there. And then like the youngest, the Gen Zs are, they're not necessarily collaborative exactly. So it's not that they're not collaborative, it's just how they work. So there's very it's causing other challenges, and they don't really know how to work without some technology. Like one of my clients had, they were doing some manual items that related to the warehouse, and they were like not understanding at all what was happening. And then they put it through a computer screen, which was still the same kind of task. And then they started to understand what to do. So, you have to be accommodating, and,
Yeah.
but, it goes back to culture, and, there's a lot of effort that's going to go into this to
I
make it
guess
work.
it's a new thing we have to worry about here in supply chain is the actual talent now.
For
Used to
sure.
not be an issue.
No, it really didn't. I mean, we talked about it being an issue, but the truth of the matter is you could always find it. You always could recruit it away from somewhere, but from where? I mean, but now we have most people, I don't know. Well, I guess a lot of the folks with a lot of expertise have retired, and they were somewhat underappreciated, really. Because actually when I was a VP of operations before I started my consulting career, which was 18 years ago, so it's a long time ago, but this happened. And that was, I had this controller who worked for me, who was really more of like a he was a high level cost accountant and he used to work at J&J. So I actually learned way more from him than vice versa, but he was awesome. And so they would tell me, like they meaning the people that I worked for or the board or somebody would say like, we should really like, he's not doing a great job. We should get rid of him because he doesn't know how to use Oracle. And I said, good Lord, no. He knows how to save money. He knows how to not double count costs. Like what in the world? We could just get somebody else to help him with Oracle. That's crazy as anything else. So anyway, we obviously kept him, but they kept bringing those kind of crazy ideas up. So that's the challenge we live with. So anyway, so that's the story with so there's definitely going to be more needs for labor. And I did put in here on the automation side, like that's the other scary thing from a California perspective, because the ports have been like these like big dogs, if you will, all along, thinking that the business wouldn't change because we have we have deep enough water so that we can unload big containers that most other folks can't and those kinds of things. So we thought, well, we'll just keep this volume. But we haven't really we're not very friendly to automation because the unions are worried about the fact that they might lose, they might lose their job. And so the problem with that though is that we're slow. We aren't, with these days you have to be really having a great customer service, fast, efficient. And we're just like, as you can see in the statistics here, we're just not that. So hopefully we can like work our way and become more okay with automation. So that's the talent side. On technology, there's like a lot happening in this world. I mean, you really just have to turn on the news now with ChatGPT, but there's cyber attacks everywhere, which is, you would think that maybe not a big deal, but it's affecting small businesses, medium businesses. It can put you out of business, and it's happening more frequently. But even like, well, that's important, obviously, especially if you own one of those businesses. But they're attacking our power grid. I already said we don't have enough power, so that's problematic. They're attacking the ports. They're attacking, all sorts of things because there's chips everywhere. So anyway, that's problematic. So cyber attacks are a problem. And then ERP and related technologies, I used to say, and it's still true, that you can always use your ERP system to a better degree and be more efficient, provide better service, etc. That's still true. However, if you do not have a modern ERP system, you are going to be passed up and you're not going to make it. Because these days you have got to have, it depends on your industry, but you have to have an e-commerce like connection that's great for your customers. You have to have, a sales forecasting piece. You have to have, depends what you're doing, but warehouse management system. You have to have a lot of modern software. You have to have business intelligence, predictive analytics, and those kinds of things. So that's going to be really important for the future as well. And then data is a whole nother topic. I mean, who knew that we would spend, from my consulting company's point of view, so much time with client data with companies that are quite large, but they just don't have the data integrity, or they don't know how to get it out of their system or the right data. There's like endless problems with data. And if you don't have data that's like meaningful to make decisions, that's what's important. I gotta tell you, 80% of clients, when we start working with them, they have all sorts of people that just do nothing but like run reports and get things out of the system and have data, but none of them know how to make any decisions because the data is not telling them something that's meaningful. It's not directionally correct, or that they don't understand their operational costs, or they don't have an idea of their capacity. They just spend all day like calculating information that might be correct in one sense, but if it doesn't lead to a decision, it's pointless. So there's just a lot of work that needs to be done on the data side of things as well. And a lot of the programs, like for example, Cal Poly Pomona recently put in a program very much related to this topic. And it also relates to AI because instead of just analyzing data, you want the data to predict what you should be doing, like predictive maintenance and those kinds of things. So that's another hot topic, which is a challenge and an opportunity. And then, well, the other challenges we have here is we have lots of talk about inflation and recessions. But the deal is that both are true. So the inflation story is not going away. We have, I mean, just look at the rail contract. So the rail companies were going to go on strike, which would have caused insurmountable problems and damage throughout the US if the system stopped. And so they eventually worked out a deal right before they were going to go on strike. But that deal resulted in a significant bump up in pay immediately, and then like continued bump ups for the next couple of years. But this is just one example, but this is happening everywhere. Also, you can't find high skilled people. So what do you have to do? You have to pay them more. So it's not necessarily bad, certainly not from our individual standpoints, because we want to be paid well for what we're doing. And in supply chain, we're in high demand. However, from a company standpoint, they have to incorporate these additional costs into the cost of the product. And that's just labor costs. The same thing's happening on the material side. Like I've been doing a rental upgrade, and that's been somewhat nightmarish, but it has also cost a fortune. But basically the issue there is that, you know, they say, oh, well, the costs are coming down, inflation's coming down. Well, maybe in comparison to the growth rate that we had the last couple of years. So instead of it growing at 100% a year, which is outrageous, it's now just growing at 80%. I mean, it's kind of crazy things like that. So, you know, the numbers are still going up. So inflation is pretty high. It's, you know, it's starting to mellow out, but compared to what? So if you look at the price of 2020 and the price today, they're significantly higher, even if now in June, it'll be, well, let's say May. In May, let's say our inflation from a year ago is coming down compared to what it was in April. Well, great news, I suppose, but compared to 2020, we're still paying insurmountably higher prices. And so are all my clients. Recently, a client lost 10% of their margin because they had significant cost increases on the supplier side. They did pass along some price increases, although it's getting harder and harder. However, their lead times are so long that that price increase hasn't even come through. So, and that's not because they're terrible and their lead times are long. It's just because they're ordering big equipment. So it's that's a big hit. I mean, that is not something that a board likes to know about or see. So these are those are issues. So that's the inflation side of things. On the other hand, because the interest rates have been going up because they really want to increase unemployment, which is not really working because there's just not enough people being employed in these higher skilled roles. So the unemployment rates are not going up. We do hear about layoffs in industries, and certainly if we're one of them, it's a bad thing. But basically, overall, there's still the rates just aren't going up because there's not enough people participating in the workforce, and so it's not accomplishing like the goal of inflation and addressing that. At the same time, it's causing panic about recessions, which means that companies are going to they're looking at cost cutting, reducing inventory, which are all good things if you do it in a smart way. Definitely not good things because I've had many clients call me once they cut the wrong things out of inventory or cut the wrong costs and they end up in a mess. And then they call and they say, help us fix this because we have no ability to serve our customers. So it's another opportunity though, because if you can do these, if you can be resilient and do these things well, then you're going to be able to take market share from everyone else who can't, which is going to happen. So I think there's like a lot of opportunity there. All right, and then we have, just making sure if we had any other questions. I don't see them yet. Okay, so what are we going to do? What's our path forward to success? You know, we have from the customer side of things, it is really important to be thinking about their customers. So you really should be targeting your customers. Like I said earlier, some of the best clients are saying, well, I mean, it's unfortunate that they can't produce enough for everybody, but that has had they have been able to say, hey, you know what? Who's profitable? Why am I spending all this time and money serving customers that are unprofitable? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So they're looking at that. So who's really the key is not just who's profitable, but who's your target customer? Because there's like lots of opportunities, but who is it that you'd really want to serve? And why not focus your efforts there instead of everybody else? So, targeting your customers, looking at customer and product profitability, paying attention to what your customers really want. And then you can go to the lean side of this. Stop providing wasted benefits that you think they might want and really look for those kinds of things that they'd be willing to pay for, whether or not you charge them. If you just give them benefits that they don't really even want and aren't willing to pay for, I mean, who's not going to accept it? But it's not something it's just going to reduce your margin and not make your customer happier. So that's not good. So you really need to pay attention. And a lot of times these days, customers don't even know what they need and want. So you really have to go further into your supply chain to like your customers' customers or customers' and figure out what is going on. What kind of products do they really need? And you have to be looking ahead because thinking about all these issues I brought up, what could happen? What if your competition can't support them? What could you do? What kind of products should you have? And how do you make yourself faster and more resilient so you can take advantage of those opportunities? So that's some of the things should be thinking about. Also, like partnering with some of these supply chain partners, customers, suppliers, etc., to find solutions where you can maybe reduce the cost overall in your supply chain and pass on some to your customers and make it a win-win-win. So it's you, your customer, your supplier, the end customer or end consumer, depending upon who it is, where everybody can win in the supply chain. There's plenty of ideas, but it would take a really long time to go through all of them. So we'll see what time we have left. And then OTIF and visibility. So OTIF is on time and full. That's many clients are interested in, how do I just get to be reliable with high on time and full delivery performance, but yet my customers or my consumers change their mind all the time, which of course they do. Amazon has taught us that that's fine. So, it's a challenge, but it's one that we can do something about, but we have to, we have to be better at all of the things that we learn through APICS and, that through participating in these types of like sessions. So there's quite a bit to do with customers. And then we have to look at the other thing that's going to happen here is we have to take control of our ability to be successful. If we want to rely upon, like Taiwan as an example, because 90% of our business is reliant on one supplier. Let's just pretend like wherever they are, it doesn't even matter. Well, what happens? What happens if they happen to be located in Taiwan? What happens if a war breaks out like in Russia and Ukraine? What happens if the ports go on strike and you can't get anything? What happens if there's a hurricane because it's located on, on the coast with in an area that gets hurricanes, those kinds of things. So, you can't worry about every risk and just worry yourself to death because that doesn't do any good. But you should be thinking about how do I take control so that I have more ability to be successful? Should I have a backup supplier? Well, certainly you should. But having just a backup supplier in name only does no good whatsoever. When I was in my role in the VP of operations role, I had a director of procurement that worked for me who, again, I learned more from than vice versa, which was a great thing. But he was really smart. And we put together win-win relationships so that they shared in the success and we shared in the success, where we collaborated on new products and we did those types of things. Well, he insisted on having a backup supplier to a supplier in Brazil, but also other places. The supplier in Brazil was significantly less costly than the supplier that was in South Carolina at the time. And so the board would always give me a hard time and say, why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much money? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe you should like bring on, reduce your labor costs. And I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? Because our costs of materials was like 70% of our costs. So why are you bothering me about these topics? But basically in this case, he insisted, and we had a supportive CEO, and we did order 20% of all of our needs from the higher cost supplier, which to their chagrin. However, then something happened. I don't even know what it was anymore, but some issue happened and we couldn't get supply from Brazil anymore. And although we were a small potato compared to our competitors, we got supply because we had always been ordering from them all along. So a backup supplier in name only won't work. You have to really have one. But anyway, that's just one idea though. We also are reshoring. There's a lot of companies that are moving manufacturing back to the US as an example. They are not necessarily publicizing it because who would? Because then they're, going to be cut off from their current supplier. But they are definitely doing that. Some of the bigger companies like Tesla, the Taiwan chip manufacturer, lots of those types of people are ordering from my clients. So I see it happening. But basically, the smaller ones aren't certainly advertising it. So, but reshoring is taking better control. We do, although in California it's outrageously expensive, in a lot of the other areas of the US, power is not so expensive. And so you have to be worried about those types of things. Nearshoring can work as well, where you move production closer to your customers or consumers, but you don't move it back like to a higher cost place like the US as an example. So instead you move it to Mexico or Costa Rica or something. And there's a lot of companies doing that, and there's a lot of good points to that. I recently did a special report, and there's lots of opportunities in a lot of those nations. However, on the other hand, the reason I brought up power is not all of them have the power or the secure electrical grid, and nearshoring production to save money to have everything go down because of power, which is just one of the examples, is problematic. What if your ports won't ship your product because China's been buying up terminals at ports? That's a problem. So, you can't just make decisions without understanding the full impact. So there's a lot you have to take control. That doesn't mean you have to own it 100%, but it does mean you need to know what you're doing and have full awareness of what you're doing throughout your supply chain. So that's definitely another key initiative that's happening. And let's see, I thought I saw something. Did I see no, I didn't, not yet. Okay. So another key program that I just wrote a book on, so I've put the link here, but it's very important. It's been very important to clients succeeding during these times, because who can tell what in the world is going on when customers don't even know what's happening, and they can't figure out their sales forecast because it changes daily. And at the same time, capacity is unknown because you have people who are, not reliable from they're calling out. We're tracking call outs with one of my clients currently. How often are we having people call out sick? It's a significant portion of the time. So they don't necessarily have the people. So SIOP is a process that helps you. It's sales inventory operations planning, but basically it means that you get a better picture of what's coming. There are ways you can do that. Even for an engineer to order type of business, you can get a picture of what is coming. In one client's case that has an engineer to order business, they all think that it's impossible in the beginning. But in one client's case, they're building significant machines, and each one is different, but they have some common elements. And again, the data issue comes up, but we are able to get a better view of what's coming down the pipe, which is very important from a material standpoint. So they can have some of these items on order that they can count on. Otherwise, their lead times were so long that their customers would go elsewhere or they wouldn't pay the price. And in another client, capacity is the issue because they had to find enough people, and you can't just hire a person and train them up and like have it all happening in a day here. It's not something that's easy at all in today's environment. So they had an issue with capacity. And another client had issues with they just simply couldn't supply it all from their facilities. So they had to find partners to offload some of the volume with temporarily until they either found a permanent source of supply or, I don't know, foreseeable future source of supply, or built a plant or whatever. I also have clients that are looking at building plants. So there's a lot of these types of things going on. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what it is that's coming down the pipe from a sales point of view. And then what does your capacity look like at either like groups of machines, groups of products, key customers, or just bottleneck operations. Like, don't worry about everything because no client can do that. But if we just worry about what's important, then you're going to be able to prepare in advance, get the appropriate capital approved, which is really difficult today because it's going to cost you a whole lot more money if you have to pay for if you have to pay a bank. You used to have to pay close to 0%, and now you're paying, more, depends, but you could be paying, the base interest rate is 5%, between 5 and 5.25, but that means that your rate could easily be 7, 8, 9, depends. But basically you're paying a lot more for that money. So it's tricky. You have to get cash available. You have to plan. I mean, you don't just decide to build a building or decide to buy a building and have it happen quickly. So there's a lot of things you got to do. So basically this is a process that gives you a way of staying in front of that demand on a regular basis, regular cadence, and then understanding your capacity and then making key decisions, and bringing that up. And there's it helps you to increase your profitability, minimize your inventory requirements, which ties up cash, and still support sales growth and your ability to be flexible. So there's a lot to be said for it, and I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. But you could just download a complimentary copy, or you could buy it. I'm certainly happy with you to buy it as well, from Amazon or iTunes, but feel free to download a complimentary copy. I'd like for all of us and our companies to be successful here. We need it. So that's what SciUp's about. You also have to take control of your talent, because it used to be easy, in quotes, and I think that this came up earlier, where you just go out and find another person, you take them from the competition, you do something where it was relatively simple and they were already trained. So they didn't think it was simple, but it was simple compared to today. Today, you have a much harder issue on your hands. So you have to have all those things we talked about earlier, the company culture, or they can look you up on, social media and say, you know what, I don't want to work for this company. There's like plenty of things that you have to do to be able to find talent. So perhaps the most important thing would be to retain your good people, which sounds simple, but it is not simple. You have to have good leaders. Although I have to say, almost every client I've worked with, there's been like some sort of stars that are awesome people that they have, that they completely underappreciated. They just didn't understand that they knew what they knew, because I don't know, sometimes they would complain because they would say, I'm worried we're gonna, have this problem or that problem. And so that, the leaders didn't want to hear it. So they just said, you know what, well, this is too, they just don't know what they're talking about. But in one of these cases, I actually worked out a deal to have that employee go to an APIX class. And it was really kind of funny because after she knew exactly what she was doing and did a great job. But once she went to the APIX class, they were like, oh, she started using more of, words that they understood, or they thought she knew what she was doing more. And so basically they were like, oh, now we, we think that she has something to say that we might listen to, because she's learned a lot. And I was thinking to myself, all she did is learn the right words because she knew exactly what to do. But nevertheless, there's a lot to be said for that. And we have to, I don't have to tell this group, but training and development is going to be really vital. So these types of sessions, the certifications, all that type of, just like attending conferences, there's a continual learning process is going to be really very important, because we're going to be having to race at high speeds to just keep up with basic needs with all the changes that are coming our way. And we're going to have to invest in technology because really, as I was saying, the certain generations are going to deal much better with technology. They won't even know what to do without it. And in addition to that, we need to automate. Why have somebody struggling to, key in and make mistakes, or, identify quality issues when you can put cameras on a line, or, there's lots of things you can do. So we're going to have to invest in technology, which leads back to, you're going to have to be willing to invest even in this environment. So it's definitely for the companies that do these types of activities and are smart about it, they're going to have more opportunities than they could ever hope for, because the rest are going to not have the product, and customers are going to come, knocking at your door. So there's a lot of, and from the individual standpoint, you're going to have more opportunities than ever before. So I think that it's, you guys are all wise for participating in these types of events and, the Apex education. From a technology standpoint, we talked a little bit about this, but, this is not for the faint of heart. 80% of ERP upgrades or implementations fail, in quotes, compared to the expected results. And why is that? Because again, it's not simple. It's not easy. It's culture change. It's more than that's just that. It's so annoying to me that the ERP suppliers run around saying we have best practice processes. There's something wrong with these people. They don't like they're resistant to change. And then what I find out in talking to them is that they're not resistant to change. They're resistant to doing something stupid that they know is going to mess up a customer, or that doesn't make any sense to the daily process, because no one has put the system with how they perform their daily tasks. So if we can figure out a way to make it work for the current business requirements that they have, then they're more than happy to use the technology. But it's not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of complications, like trying to talk between IT and users. So lots of problems. However, like I was saying earlier, if you don't have a modern ERP system, you're going to be just like left in the dust. So you're going to have to work on it one way or another. And the systems that are modern and investing have some very cool features. I mean, they have several AI attributes, like I was saying, predictive analytics. I mean, you go on and on, but there's a lot to, a lot of exciting features and abilities, but it's not, but you know what, buying that and then not investing in what you need to go live on the system successfully, you'd be better off just doing nothing, because you'll end up in a worse shape than if you hadn't done anything at all. So there's a whole other topic on that one. From an industry 5.0 point of view, there's a lot of new technologies that are very important. If you think about Internet of Things and AI, many of these are combined topics. If you look at autonomous trucks, you have to be looking at, you have to have 5G, you have to have, what do you do if like something goes down, like the internet, the power grid, any of these things. You don't want cars crashing in. I mean, bad results. And it's not all, about that, but I could give countless examples, but you have to have a lot more technology and skills to work in this sort of environment. Like if you have a machine collecting data, and stopping production because it identifying like that you have a quality issue. Like I was working with a food bar manufacturer and they had a lot of cool technology. However, if things went wrong, the line was like that Lucy line, you know, in I Love Lucy. If you ever seen that episode, which is kind of crazy, she's making like, I think chocolate, I don't know, but they were like, it was really funny. You should see it. But nevertheless, it went into disaster because she couldn't keep up with the line when something went wrong. Well, that's what happens with technology. Stuff starts flying off the end of the line, or, certain parts of it breaks down. It's like the supply chain. A link breaks down and you have an issue. So there's more you need to do, but basically you have to take advantage of these opportunities, or at least the ones that are right for your business, not all of them. And then you'll to have a chance to compete because your competition will. And digital twins, it's really more of it's just another one I threw out there, which Chat GPT is another that's like that we hear about, but there's like features like that. But a digital twin is a way to kind of do a what if kind of analysis relatively simply, like have your manufacturing area check out different scenarios to see which one's going to be the best one. And a lot of these types of softwares can really, or technologies can really benefit you and allow you to make quicker progress than trying to do it all manually, but you do need people to work with it. So from a technology standpoint, leads us back to data. So like I was talking about earlier, really spending some time on your data integrity, but please do not fall into the trap that I have clients falling into. They're like, we have to fix every single run rate. We need to do a time study. I'm like, what in heaven's name? That's going to take you like a year just to get information. In the meantime, what are we going to be doing? Why don't we start improving, make some directional changes, go in the right direction, even if we aren't 100% like going towards where we want to go. If we're moving forward and we're making progress, we're going to get there so much quicker. In the meantime, someone else is trying to be perfect and getting every single run rate right, and it's not even what they need to do, because that's not even going to give them the right information to make the right decision. But in the meantime, their competition has long passed them by, and they're still like updating run rates, and it's just crazy the things that go on. So I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't update your run rates, but you also could implement AI and just say, hey, what's the best run rate? What's the trend of run rates? Throw out the high and low, put some statistics in place. Trust me, you're going to be 99% better than what you're going to calculate after a year or 2 years or 3 years or however long it takes you when you've been doing nothing else. So there's plenty of ways you could move forward there. Business analytics and dashboards is really quite important. We've been talking about that a bit. But you have to be able to slice and dice your data to make good decisions, know where to focus from a customer point of view, stay in front of your customers, which is not easy. It's not just all about customers, though, because you also need to look at what's happening with your orders, what's happening with your manufacturing output, those types of things. So there's plenty to do on the data side. And then so where does this all lead? I think that the good news and the bad news is that we are not finished with the disruptions, because the disruptions, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. We got to, stop the disruptions. Well, with supply chains moving, because there's plenty of them moving, reshoring, nearshoring, backup suppliers, all sorts of things that weren't happening before, it's going to create disruptions, because if you think about it from an apex point of view, past demand based on past history is no longer going to be valid, because actually half your supply chain's moving around, even if they're not completely reshoring, let's say. But basically they're moving around. So things are not going to be stable, which is going to cause disruptions. There are new people, new talent, don't have a clue what was going on before. They're learning their way through it. They're going to make mistakes. So there's plenty of disruptions that will continue. However, the disruptions are going to be your opportunity, because if you can create resiliency in your company by some of the things that I was talking about, the SIOP process, technology, your culture, there's plenty of things, all the things that I've been saying. If you can be resilient, but resilient isn't going to be good enough. Like if you're just responding to changing conditions, you're going to be forever in a rat race, which many of us feel like we're in anyway. But basically, you'll be forever in a rat race, and it's just not going to be enough anymore. It's just not enough. So instead, you also have to be innovative, which can mean, I don't know, there's lots of ways to be innovative from a products point of view, getting in front of what your customers need, to just doing some things like I've been talking about that might be vendor managed inventory. It sounds pretty, we were doing it 20 years ago. However, some of these things are still considered innovative, if you can imagine that. And how do you do it in a little bit different way that helps your business? There's plenty of ways. So we have to be innovative. We have to use additional technologies, and we have to do all. So there's resilience, there's innovation and use of technology. We have to be forward thinking. So we can't be looking at, and you should look at history, but that's just one of many variables. You also have to be looking at future expectations. You're going to have to think. I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, it'll be exciting, but you can no longer just say, oh, well, the computer told me. No, it's not going to work. Or, like this is what happened in the past. Not going to work. It's going to be, you have to be forward thinking. You have to question yourself. You have to be willing to say, you know what, I was wrong. Listen to other people, debate, get all sorts of information. It's not for the faint of heart. That's why a lot of people are continuing to retire, first of all. So you may as well, if you do all those types of things, I believe that we're going to have more opportunities than any other time in history, other than maybe during the Great Depression. Now, during the Great Depression, I'm not saying that we're going to get to that point, at least I hope not. But basically, what's similar about it is that the companies that actually invested in smart strategies, which did require some money, but you don't have to do it where it requires a ton of money. You can be smart about this. The companies that invested when everyone else was panicking, slashing costs without like paying attention to what costs they were slashing inventories, doing all those kinds of things that we love to do, it seems. But they surpassed the competition and held like leadership positions in their industries for decades. And that's what I think is going to happen again. It's similar in the sense that there's as much change, disruption, and other things going on that if you can't supply your target customers' needs, you may still get business, but you'll get business of all the unprofitable customers, and that won't be very good. But on the other hand, if you're ready and your ability to crank up the volume quickly without having to have plants just waiting around to produce, so it's not going to be easy, but there's ways to do it. If you can do that, then you'll have more opportunities than ever before. So that's the really good news, I think, is that we'll have vast opportunities. And as supply chain professionals, you'll have vast opportunities, because who wants to work for the company that's going down? If you feel like if your company is not going in the right direction, you should certainly point it out to leadership. You should give them an opportunity, because believe me, these leaders are overwhelmed. On the other hand, if they don't listen, if they're unwilling to do any of the right things, you have vast opportunities. You better get on a ship that's going to be, sailing into the future instead of one that's going to go down the drain, because I think that one of the two is going to happen. The winners will be separated from the losers. So there's plenty of opportunities, especially for the folks who are on this call, because you're investing in your development and are going to be more of the progressive, forward-thinking folks, which is great. Keep it up. So one of the things that I'd like to also offer, in addition to the SciOp download, is I just published a special report. It's talking about these types of things: the road ahead, business, supply chain, and the world order. There's some. I wrote an executive summary that alone is what I see coming and how we can thrive. I've told you a lot of the key points, and then I've have 27 different experts that I've talked through. Like there's international experts on, what about sourcing to India? Because that might be a good option. What about nearshoring? What about, how do we navigate the insurance realm? Because there's rate hikes are ridiculous. I mean, even my mom, for some reason, they raised her car insurance like more than double. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But these are the kinds of things that are going on. And it's not just her, it's companies too. And so how do you navigate some of these ideas? So anyway, feel free to download your copy if you'd like it. And here's my contact information, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have. And give you some advice if you want to tell me about any of your client examples or your business examples or a personal thing you're struggling with from the supply chain point of view.
That was awesome, Lisa. I really like how you put all the statistics into it. You know, you have your numbers straight, you've done your research. I don't know if you're reading a lot of magazines, but even in the beginning, you knew about the vacancy level of the warehousing. I was like, how does she get all that information?
Yeah, well, and I'm happy to send you these slides as well if you'd like them. But you know what? It is true. I feel tired sometimes trying to keep up because it's impossible to keep up. But I belong to several groups. Well, obviously I lead the Apex chapter for our area, but or for the Inland Empire area. But I also, participate in that logistics group I was talking about, and I participate with a group of trusted advisors and just surveying clients. I mean, it's an endless process, but really these days you have to be able to know what's going on in order to navigate the area. Otherwise you're working on old information. So yeah, it's not simple, but it also, you have lots of good resources that are happy to help. Like I mentioned Tony earlier today, so I may as well give Tony a plug for being so, he's always like so helpful. So thanks to Tony for that purpose.
Yeah. I mean, it's always changing and you got to stay on top of it. I know. And it gets rough sometimes, you have a bad day. It's like, do I really need all this? And I think, well, yes, I do. Yeah. I like the challenges. I like the opportunities. I always look at everything as opportunity, and it's an opportunity, not an obstacle, so.
Right. That's true. Just wish you didn't have so many opportunities sometimes.
Opportunities, but it's okay. It's one day at a time.
Very true. So does anybody have any questions that you want to run by me, or if not, that's okay too. You can always like send them when you think of them.
I think mine was more of a comment. I echo what Cheetah was saying. This was nice to just take a step back and look at it as a holistic point of view, right? And we've learned a lot through COVID, but just to realize it's not over yet. We've got lots of learnings we've done, and there's a lot ahead of us. So thank you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The good news is that from a supply chain career point of view, there's plenty of opportunities. So that's a good thing.
That's true. And everyone knows what supply chain is now. So
that's a really big thing actually, because I've been consulting now for 18 years. And until the pandemic, I would always I just gave up eventually. I was like, fine. I would say I'm in supply chain and they say, oh, great. Or you're in procurement. I was like, well, that's actually my least strongest, or however you want to put that, area. However, sure, I know something about procurement. And then they'd say, different people would say, oh, you're a logistics expert. And I was like, well, actually, I work a lot more with manufacturing. But then I just said, you know what, that's fine. Well, let's just talk about it. And then once we talked about it, I would explain, what I really do. But now that the pandemic has happened, at least they know what supply chain even means. So that's they at least know more about it.
You got to buy it, process it, and sell it, right?
Right, that's right. Make, plan, buy, right? Deliver.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of well, I mean, all this that I think a lot of you have been involved for a long time, so it's come in quite handy during the pandemic.
Sure has. Well, thank you, Lisa. We really appreciate it. We can meet in person maybe next year sometime. We'll invite you out to Orange County.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you at the conference.
Yeah, very good. Well, very good. Well, thank you. And if anyone has things that pop to mind later, say, oh, shoot, I wish I could have asked this question, just feel free to drop me a line.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great job, Lisa.
Right, thank you. Have a good night.
Lisa.
Yes, thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.